Welcome everyone and happy Friday. Thanks for tuning in to the Penn GSE live webinar series for today. The Penn GSE live series is hosted by the Penn GSE Center for Professional Learning. The Center for Professional Learning designs and delivers professional learning opportunities that support educators, leaders, policymakers, entrepreneurs, and other professionals to deepen their knowledge, build their networks, and grow their careers. One such opportunity that will be beginning this summer is the Project-Based Learning Certificate Program. This program provides an innovative professional learning experience that allows currently practicing educators to leverage the educational expertise of Penn GSE's faculty and some of the most skilled, experienced, student-centered learning practitioners from across the country. You can learn more about and register for the PBL certificate program at tinyurl.com/PBL certificate. We'll also put the link in the chat. Another exciting program on the horizon is PBL for Global Climate Justice. This program brings together secondary school educators from across the country and around the world to design project-based learning curricula focused on the problems and questions of global climate change. You can learn more about and register for PBL for Global Climate Justice at tinyurl.com/PBL CLIMATE 2022, and we'll put the link in the chat for that as well. Today's webinar will be hosted by Taylor Hausberg. Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you, Alana. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this Penn GSE live webinar. My name is Taylor Hausberg, and I work with the Center for Professional Learning based at the University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education. Improving teachers' practice is key to improving student outcomes. Professional development for teachers can support their growth, but designing PD experiences that are engaging and impactful can be challenging. We are fortunate to have Dr. Sarah Schneider Kavanagh here with us today to share with us a few of her insights about creating learning opportunities that are authentic and relevant to teachers' interests and needs. Dr. Kavanagh is an assistant professor in teaching, learning, and leadership here at Penn GSE. In general, Dr. Kavanagh's work focuses on ways to support teachers in improving their practice. A former secondary teacher herself, Dr. Kavanagh is an expert in questions of how teachers are trained, ongoing teacher mentoring, professional development, and teacher certification. Her scholarship focuses on practice-based pedagogical approaches to preparing teachers to engage in inquiry-based instruction. Currently, Dr. Kavanagh is leading 2 large research teams in multi-year investigations of innovative designs for teacher learning, one of which is a study of teacher learning within Penn GSE's PBL certificate program, which we'll be discussing today. Sarah, welcome, and thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you. It's really great to be with you, and thank you for that very kind introduction. It's always nice to have the opportunity to talk with you.
Likewise. In the next 30 minutes, I'll begin by asking Dr. Kavanagh a few questions. If you, our listeners, have any questions that come up as we're talking, please do type them in the Q&A or chat, and we'll get to a few of your questions in the last 10 minutes or so. Also, if you have any tech issues, you can type those in the Q&A or chat as well. So Sarah, to start us off, could you tell us a little bit about your personal and professional path to researching and working on this topic of professional development and teacher preparation?
Sure. It's been a long and winding path to get to get where I am now. I think if you had asked me when I was a teacher, I taught middle school first and then high school. If you had asked me, you know, where I was going to be at this stage of my life, I would never have said, oh, I'm going to be studying teacher education and professional development. But what was happening for me when I was a teacher was I just realized how complex and how hard the work is of teaching. And I was always looking for ways to get better and sort of really struggling to find them, which led me to pursue a doctorate, thinking that I would find all of the answers there, but mostly what I just found were more questions. And what I wanted to understand was, why is it so hard to get better as a teacher, and what kinds of experiences support teachers to improve their practice? Mostly because I just wanted to be better. I wanted to be the best teacher I could be. And I still do, because I still teach. And so I was lucky enough when I was a doctoral student to get my RA-ship, was sort of sitting in the back of the classroom of a teacher educator who I very deeply admire, named Elham Kazemi, who teaches math methods and is a sort of math education researcher at the University of Washington, sitting at the back of her math methods classroom where she was working with pre-service teachers and just taking a lot of field notes for another research project about what she was doing. And I was mesmerized. And I think I realized at that point that there are ways to support teacher learning that I had never imagined before. And then if I had had access to them, I just would have been a better teacher. So that experience led me down the road of doing a whole series of different studies of different professional development experiences for both pre-service and in-service teachers, and then tracking teachers' growth over time. And it's been a great experience because I've gotten to meet so many amazing teachers. I've gotten to meet so many amazing teacher educators and professional developers. And it's been sort of a lucky accident that I landed here at Penn GSE and was able to work with the Penn PBL program on this most recent project.
Very cool, Sarah. So jumping into that project, for those folks who might be listening to this conversation but aren't familiar with the PBL certificate program, perhaps can you give us a little bit of context about that program? What are some of the goals, and what is a typical teacher's experience in this program?
Sure. So a lot of work around project-based learning is focused on curriculum. So designing different projects or getting teachers to design different projects, professional development for teachers that focuses on the curriculum that's been designed for them. The Penn PBL program is totally different. It takes a really different entryway into the problem. It says, all right, there's a lot of different curricular resources out there. People have access to a lot of different projects. A lot of teachers have built their own projects. We're not going to give you a particular curriculum. Our job is to give you access to other teachers and to expert coaches to help you work on your practice, regardless of the curriculum you happen to be using. So rather than a curriculum-driven teacher learning experience, it's a teacher practice-driven experience, which means that the whole program is organized around a set of core goals, 4 core goals, and core practices that are associated with those core goals. And there's a summer institute, one summer, where teachers come for a sort of a week-long intensive experience that's in person when we're not in a global pandemic. And then there's a year of academic year learning cycles with people in your content area. So if you're a science teacher, you meet with other high school science teachers and you have a specific science expert coach who works with you, and you work virtually with those practicing teachers. And what you're doing during that year is you're watching video of other teachers trying out the practices that you want to try out. You're watching video of yourself that you capture. It's very organized around the actual video of your teaching and your colleagues' teaching as you try to work on a particular practice. So let's say the practice is supporting student collaboration. You would meet with your small team of other science teachers, and then you would capture video of yourself trying to support students to collaborate. You'd then watch that video with some colleagues and talk about the sticky points of why it's hard to get students to collaborate and what should you try next. And then the next cycle would be focusing on a different set of practices. And then you come back again the next summer for another week-long intensive where you start thinking about, okay, what are your next steps for improving after the program's over? It's a really great program. We've gotten a lot of very, very good feedback from teachers. I've been a little bit blown away by how popular it is with the teachers, which has been great. I mean, my role isn't really to design the program and teach in the program. My role is to study teacher learning in the program, but it's nice to study teacher learning in a context where I know the teachers are pleased.
Yes, for sure. So what are some of the questions that you're asking of this program?
So we are trying to understand to what extent and in what ways our teachers practice growing over the course of their development, the course of their participation in the PD program. And because we have this core practice framework with 4 core goals and a set of associated core practices around it, I realize I'm going like this. It's because we have an actual framework. Do you have the
Yes,
graphic?
I will pull it up as
that
you
would be
speak,
helpful
Sarah.
to show. I'm making the graphic with my fingers, but other people can't see it. But because we have this framework here, we're actually tracking teachers' growth along each of the practices. So if you'll see the goals in the middle, disciplinary rigor, authentic tasks, an iterative classroom where people are trying things out and prototyping and revising, a collaborative classroom where kids are collaborating with one another. So those 4 goals all have associated core practices. So the outside part of this ring with the squares instead of the circles are the core practices. And those practices are what the whole program is oriented around. So teachers learn how to elicit higher order thinking from their students. Teachers learn how to support students to make choices. Teachers learn how to support students to reflect and revise. So they spend a lot of time on each one of these practices in their teams. They capture video of themselves trying it out. So, and when it comes to research, we're tracking teacher growth over time along each of these practices. So we have an observation protocol that we use to score video of teaching to see from before the program, through the program, and then after the program, what changes can we detect in teachers' practice over time. So that's one of our questions. We're trying to understand at the level of what you can see in video, to what extent are teachers' practices changing over time. Another one of our questions is how are teachers' understandings of these practices changing over time. Additionally, we're interested in understanding whether we can find relationships between changes in teachers' practice and changes in those teachers' students' work. So we're collecting video of their teaching, but also artifacts of student work. And then lastly, we're interested in understanding what elements of the program are actually influencing the change, if we can find any of those. So it's been a very big project with a lot of data, a lot of video data, a lot of student work data, a lot of survey and interview data. And we're still in the midst of trying to figure out everything that we can from all of the data that we've collected.
And just for context, Sarah, like how many teachers are you looking at?
48 teachers are a part of the project over 2 different cohorts of PBL teachers. So we're no longer collecting data. Like anyone who enters the program now wouldn't be a part of the research project, sure. But it's from past cohorts. We have 48 participants.
Gotcha, makes sense. And so what are you noticing in terms of teachers' growth? To that question of how and to what extent are teachers growing? What are you finding so far?
So it's been a pretty exciting project to be a part of. You know, we don't have a very large sample, right? When it comes to research, you know, people who can detect lots of growth tend to have much larger samples than we do. We're working with a very small sample. Right. And I say 48, but for each particular analysis that we're doing, the numbers are smaller depending on sure. lots of factors, which we don't need to get into here. But even with the small sample that we have been able to identify some pretty interesting and significant changes. So if you'll remember back to the framework, there are 4 goals: disciplinary, authentic, collaborative, iterative. When looking at thank you for putting that up there. Yeah. Disciplinary, authentic, iterative, collaborative. When looking at, basically we captured video from before teachers' entrance into the program and after teachers' entrance into the program. Actually, we ended up using video from near the end of their participation in the program because of a lot of factors, mostly related to COVID. So we're trying to see what are the differences between pre-program and at the end of the program. And what we're finding is that all of the practices were actually trending growth, but some of them had really statistically significant growth across the time points. And those were the ones related to disciplinary practices and iterative practices. And that's been really fascinating to see. The other really interesting thing, though, is that when we surveyed teachers about which of these, which sets of practices they thought were most influencing them, first of all, the first set of teachers we asked said every single one of them. They're all really influential and really helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
So then we added another question onto our survey, which asked them to rank. So they had to say one was more impactful than another, because otherwise we weren't able to tell any different. And when we asked that group of teachers, they almost all of them ranked authenticity as the highest, and then collaborative, although some of them switched authentic and collaborative as 1 and 2, and iterative and disciplinary were lower, which was really interesting because it's actually the exact opposite of what we saw in their practice with the videos that we collected from their practice. We have a lot of hypotheses about why that might be, which I'm happy to riff on and talk with you about a little bit. But it's been kind of fascinating to see that those kind of mirror image findings from the survey results and from the video results. I mean, the good news is we're actually seeing change across all of them. It's just that some of them are more significant than others.
Sure. So I do want to get into the why or some of your hypothetical whys behind what you're seeing. But before we do, can you just give some examples of like some of these shifts in terms of disciplinary and iterative practices? What does that look like in these videos that you're watching?
Yeah. So, for example, here's a good example. So we had one teacher who showed us video before they entered the program of a unit that they had done that was actually really fascinating and great and lovely in a whole lot of ways, focused on getting kids to build Rube Goldberg machines. You know, those machines?
Fun. Yes,
You see the
like
YouTube videos, right, where you build them and they like go through a whole backyard and there's like a ball that goes, basically you're learning a whole bunch of physics ideas, or you're applying a whole bunch of concepts from physics to get an object to move through a variety of obstacles, but to keep moving. And then students had to reflect on the process of building the Rube Goldberg machine and like what aspects of physics were involved in what they were doing. And in the video that we saw, there was a lot of attention paid on sort of the activity itself and a little bit less on the physics. And when you look at the student work, students would say things like, this part of the Rube Goldberg machine, there was evidence of friction, period. Right. So it's not a very sophisticated understanding of friction, right? But they're sort of calling on these things in slightly different kinds of ways. When we then collected a video from the same teacher later on at the end of the PD, they were inside of a project where what they were doing was working on like creating proposals for new highway setups. So similar, right? We're also in the physics world. I am not a physics expert, so I'm sure that I'm talking about this in ways that are not that sophisticated. I was not the person coding the examples. We had people with experience in science teaching doing that. But in these cases, the videos that we saw, the teacher, while you had a project, Rube Goldberg machine one, creating a sort of new highway ramp proposal in another, a lot of the content that the teachers were talking about were just much more sophisticated and in-depth inside of the physics. So this top set of practices relating to disciplinary, eliciting higher order thinking, orienting students to subject area content, engaging students in disciplinary practices were all much more evident in the teacher's teaching. And then also in the student work that we collected, the kids' sophistication in how they talked about the physics inside of their highway project was significantly more present than it had been when we had collected it pre-PD. So that's an example of changes around disciplinary. There are also, though, I could tell you like just differences in all different kinds of areas from all of the different teachers that we were following. But hopefully that helps give a little bit more context.
Yeah, absolutely. That helps kind of paint a picture of some of the changes you're seeing. So now, I'm curious to hear, Sarah, what are some of your hypotheses around why changes in disciplinary and iterative practices and not the others when it's collaborative and authentic that teachers are saying is most impactful? What's going on there?
Well, one of the hypotheses that I have is that because the teachers in both their interviews and their surveys are very adamant that they are noticing changes in their own practice in relationship to collaboration and authenticity. One wondering I have is whether our research instruments and our research processes were able to capture the changes in authenticity and collaboration, which, is a question. Also, we did some analyses in the interview data, which helped us see, because teachers described their projects, and in their descriptions of projects, we could absolutely see changes in authenticity. We just weren't capturing it in the video. So then I have a question, which is like, maybe in these small excerpts of video, that's actually not a thing you can capture, the authenticity of a project. It doesn't show up in 20-minute clips of a video the way that iteration and disciplinary rigor does. So that's one question I have about authenticity, because when we look at their descriptions of their units, we are seeing changes in authenticity. The collaboration question I have a question about, because I actually wonder if it's related to classroom audio is terrible. Anybody who does classroom research can tell you getting good classroom audio is really hard to do when you're using videos as your primary data source. And our scoring rubric for collaboration, like when kids are collaborating with one another, that is the moment when it is the hardest to hear what's happening in a classroom. So I have a wondering as to whether, because of the audio problems in video, we weren't able to see as much collaboration. Now, that's me making these assumptions. It could be something, it could be that they really didn't grow in those areas. It could also be that these things, collaboration and authenticity, are harder and take longer to learn. And so maybe teachers believe that they're learning, but the progress is showing up at a slower pace. Who knows? I mean, it could be any number of things.
Sure.
Those are some of my hypotheses about why that might be.
Yeah, makes sense. I do have a few more questions, but actually we're getting some from our listeners. So I'm going to switch gears and give voice to some of their wonderings. So Ryan Villanueva asks, are you aware of any research that links teacher ed to student outcomes as it relates specifically to equity? So how does equity overlay on all of these research questions that you're asking, Sarah?
Are you aware of any research that links teacher ed to student outcomes as it relates specifically to equity? There's a lot of concepts in that question. There's teacher ed, there's student outcomes, there's equity. I'm aware of a lot of research on issues of equity relating to teacher ed and student outcomes. And I can talk to you about specific studies that engage that question in a variety of different kinds of ways. But I don't know that I can answer that question in exactly the way that it's posed. That's a really good one. I would want to know more specifically about what this person is particularly asking. So I'm going to do a bad job of answering it.
I think, no, you're right. It's hard, and our apologies, Ryan, that this is a webinar and we can't call on you to explain more of what's on your mind. But picking up on that theme of equity that Ryan mentioned in his question, how does equity show up in this research that you're conducting? How is that layered on into the research questions, or maybe into some of your findings or your analysis? Like how is equity showing up?
So, I mean, one of the things that's been really fascinating, I think, in conversations about project-based learning is I have encountered people who have said, oh, that would, though that kind of student-centered approach to teaching and learning, where that's like active classrooms and kids' ideas being the engine that drives instruction, that's all well and good for private schools or really affluent communities. But when it comes to public schools and when it comes to communities where there's a lot of poverty, that we have to be focusing on different kinds of things. And to that, I actually have a real bone to pick, in part because I think one of the real things that has been inequitable in schools to date is that too frequently the schools that are in the most poverty impacted communities are the ones where the most rote decontextualized instruction ends up happening because of poor policy decisions or because of sort of scripted curriculum. And there has been some recent research actually coming out of other universities that has been illustrating something that I think many of us have known for a long time, which is that kids from all different kinds of communities are doing better when they have access to classrooms where kids' ideas are driving instruction and where kids are asked to do the thinking and carry the heavy cognitive load in ways that are not about rote scripted curriculum, but are about sort of student-centered projects. So what's been exciting about this work is we've been bringing together teachers from a lot of different contexts. So the teachers in this study are coming, it's been kind of a fascinating project because some teachers are coming from really affluent communities, private schools. Other teachers are coming from really different kinds of schools, urban schools, rural schools, schools in poverty impacted communities, schools in unpoverty impacted communities, and working together to think across a whole set of problems, which has been great to see, actually. It's been great to see folks sort of thinking across these different contexts about how to keep kids at the center.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, Sarah, how what is it that the PD facilitators or the structure of the PD is doing that is supporting these changes in teachers' disciplinary and iterative practices specifically, but growth more generally? What is it about the program design or the experience, or either from an empirical base or maybe just your hunch?
I have a lot of ideas about this at the hunch level, but we also have been doing research on it. So I'll talk to you about the research.
Okay, let's start there. Yeah.
So the program is designed to be really practice-based in two levels, right? One, it's organized around a set of core practices. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that makes it practice-based. But secondly, the teacher's practice is sort of the text from which teachers are learning. So what I mean by that is over the course of the academic year that they're involved, what the teachers are doing is using videos of their own classroom as the text that everybody's reading together, in order to learn about teaching. So practice itself becomes the primary text of the program. And the coaches have to use particular kinds of pedagogical approaches to use videos of teacher practice in meaningful ways. So what we did to study coaches' practice and its impact on teachers' practice was we coded all of the coaching video. So we have video of all the coaching from the two cohorts that we followed. And we took all of that coaching video and we coded it based on different coaching practices. So one coaching practice is showing representations of teaching. So showing video representations mostly of teaching to groups of teachers. Another is decomposing practice. So identifying this is the particular core practice we're working on. Here are its component parts. Let me explain what this core practice looks like. Another is giving teachers an opportunity to prepare to enact a practice. So helping them think about, when are you going to do this next in your classroom? Let's make a plan together. When's the right time to do this with your kids? And another is opportunities to reflect on their own thinking, how their own thinking has changed about the practice. So we coded all of the coaching video and chunked it into those different coaching practices. And then we tried to see, are there relationships between the time spent in coaching on each particular practice? So like representing, like time spent watching a representation of video, time spent decomposing a practice, time spent reflecting. Are there relationships between time spent in particular coaching practices and growth in teachers' practice in their own classroom? And interestingly, what we've found is a significant relationship between the time spent decomposing practice and for later growth in teachers' practices. So I've been working with somebody you know very well, Dr. Liz Gottwalt, who just recently defended her dissertation, to think about, okay, what might the relationship be between decomposing practice and later growth in teachers' practice? And we found that the teachers who are spending longer on decomposing practice are also decomposing practice in a different kind of way than the coaches who are spending shorter times of decomposing practice. So anyway, this is all to say, I know we don't have a ton of time, but this is all to say that this research project is helping us to understand not just what makes for really good teaching, because we're able to identify, which we haven't talked about, some relationships between teachers' practice and students' work, but also what are some high quality coaching practices that we can empirically say have relationships to growth in teacher practice. So that's been really fascinating and interesting work to do.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much. Yeah, I wish we had more time to further decompose your insights around decomposition and student outcomes, but we will have to save that for another conversation. We'll just have to have you back, Sarah.
That's all right. I like talking to you. So, you know, you can have me back anytime.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for being here. Thank you to all of you who tuned in and listened to this conversation. We are, as always, very eager to hear what you thought about this conversation. We want them to be useful and interesting to all of you. So we will, in just a moment, put up a feedback link on the screen. We'll also stick it in the chat. And we would love for you to fill that out if you have just 30 seconds right now. We would love to hear your thoughts. We also invite you to check out other learning opportunities offered by the Center for Professional Learning at gse.upenn.edu/academics/professional-learning. If you like what you heard during this conversation, please share it broadly. Dr. Kavanagh has a Twitter that we posted here, as do we. So we would love to just keep the conversation going with all of you and invite you to share your learnings. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you at a future webinar or program. Thank you, Dr. Kavanagh.
Thank you. Have a great day.